And welcome to the Canby Urban Renewal Agency special meeting of January 21st, 2015. Let's all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now a moment of silence for our uniformed troops and first responders who serve in harm's way. Thank you. Please be seated. Our very first item on the agenda tonight, it's time with the changing of a city council and the picking of new city council officers and liaison assignments. We likewise, in the Urban Renewal Agency, at this time, select our URA chair and vice chair for the next 2 years. And so I'll open it up to nominations for a URA chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Hensley.
I nominate Chair Tim Dale as chair next year, if he would accept the nomination.
Second that.
Thank you.
Can we third?
I think that's called a vote then.
I was going to say that as well, yes.
Are there any other nominations? Everyone okay with the slate being closed? All right. It's been moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Vice Chair Hodson, to move for Tim Dale to be URA chair for this next term. All those in favor, please say aye.
Is that a debatable motion?
Is it debatable?
It is debatable. Is there any debate?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to say the reason I'm going to support this is because of the mechanics with which you have demonstrated such skill of putting these agendas together and getting the information out to us. This is more than just a piece of glory. This is a lot of work that you and the mayor do in getting the council and the URA meetings together. So I've been impressed by how much work you've done.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that deeply, Greg. Thank you. Any other comments? Are we ready for the vote? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed? And it carries 6-0. Thank you very much for your confidence and the kind words. I appreciate it. And now we'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Hensley.
I nominate Mayor Hodson as vice chair, if you would accept the nomination.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? All right. Is there any comments? Ready for the vote? All in favor of Vice Chair Hodson remaining as vice chair? Oh, excuse me. I got it backwards. It's been moved by Commissioner Hensley and seconded by Commissioner Rocha for Vice Chair Hodson to remain vice chair. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? And motion passes 6-0. Thank you, agency. Next up, we have citizen input. Do we have any citizens that would like to address the agency tonight? All right. All right, we have none. We have some guests tonight. Thank you for coming. Next up, we have community announcements. The first announcement is one I have tonight. Talking with our administrator, Rick Robinson, you've seen kind of a pattern in agency schedules of late, and if it's okay with the agency, we would like to offer to, as our general practice, move URA meetings to the same night as council when the schedules accommodate and save another evening for both us and staff. Any comments on that?
I think it's a good idea. We can afford the mileage, but I like to reduce the wear and tear on staff. So,
Likewise, I remember that when I first became a counselor / commissioner, we did have it on these nights, and we found ourselves crunched for time because we were talking about big projects, so we moved to that second night so we didn't have to rush before the council meeting. And we're kind of in a spot now where I think we can go back to that. And then, we might have to schedule that second Wednesday as projects arise, but I think as a regular basis, this is fitting.
Do we just reassess as needed, or how does that work?
Yeah, and if we had a big night, if Rick sensed we had a big night coming, we could look at scheduling it back on the second Wednesday, pull everybody and make sure it's
Special.
available. And special meeting.
Yeah, and what has been happening is that Kim has had to send a notice out every time we didn't do an urban renewal meeting on the 2nd and 4th. This way, that when we are going to do a meeting, because we have a larger agenda, that will be the exception, so we'll be able to notify. Otherwise, we'll plan when we have agency business to begin the business meeting at 6 p.m. prior to the council meeting at 7:30, which should give us plenty of flexibility.
Agreeable to everyone? Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Kim, you don't need a motion, you're fine with just consensus? Great. All righty. Rick, Kim, did you have any more community announcements?
I don't.
All right. Next up, we have the consent agenda. And do you have a copy of that?
I do not.
Is it just the minutes?
just the
All
minutes.
right.
I move that we accept the consent agenda, which include the minutes from the November 12th, 2014 Urban Renewal District Agency Special Meeting.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Vice Chair Hodson and seconded by Commissioner Hensley to accept the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from the November 12th, 2014 Urban Renewal District Agency Special Meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Next, under new business, we have results from the Civic Center Architectural Design Consultant interviews, and Rick will present those for us.
Yes, thank you. I would like to share with you that we received 7 architectural proposals from some very competent and very qualified firms. We had a group of 7 panelists evaluate the written proposals and selected from among those 7 the top 3. The panelists participating were Roger Reif, Melissa Kelly, Amanda Zyber, Ken Andrews, Councilor Rocha, Councilor Dale, and myself. We interviewed the top 3 candidates last Thursday. I was not in attendance to that. At that interview, however, they recorded the session for me, and I listened to the recorded session and was able to participate in the decision process as an active member of the committee. Following the interviews, it was the consensus opinion that Scott Edwards Architecture, LLP, also known as SEA, is the firm with whom we will begin sitting down and negotiating a contract. Failing to reach agreement with SEA, we'll move to a number 2 selection, McKinsey Group. Both groups are out of the Portland area. Both have extremely high level of interest in this project. I did have a late afternoon, early evening conversation with Scott Edwards' principal, just to reassure myself that SEA was fully on board and capable of performing the project. SEA is also doing the architectural design work for the City of Oregon City project. And we had a little bit of concern that there could be some compaction. I've been assured and reassured, and I put on my antagonist hat in my conversations with this principal to verify that in fact they did have that level of commitment, and they were willing to make the commitment necessary to assure some success in this project. We will be meeting with them, an initial meeting tomorrow. Amanda and I will, to review scope, and then I have a commitment from the principal, Sid Scott. Sid Scott, to present to us on Monday a pricing proposal, and from there we'll negotiate a final price and final contract. If we're unsuccessful in reaching agreement on that contract, we'll immediately move to the number 2 choice, the McKinsey Group, and initiate the same process with them. However, following my discussion, I have a greater level of confidence in SEA's willingness, desire, and ability to come in within the budget that we've allocated for architectural services. We were really influenced to a large degree in in my opinion, I'll speak for the group. I know there were some differing opinions, but I thought it was one of the attributes that SCA brought was an ability to interact with the community. Their communication skills and willingness to walk out into whatever the community brings and find ways to bring the community partners together, I thought was extremely persuasive. And this is something that we as a city and you as a governing body, I know, are extremely interested in doing, bringing the parties together and coming to a common agreement on what this building should really be, what it should look like, how it should function, how it should perform, and I feel confident that SCA can deliver that for us. So our next step will begin tomorrow afternoon in negotiations. We are still on track to bring you the architectural contract on the meeting of February 4th, and which will be an urban renewal meeting at 6 o'clock. And barring any unforeseen circumstances, which I'll report on certainly at and before the February 4th meeting, I would anticipate an agreement with SCA. I will tell you also that we are still working on the construction manager general contractors, CMGC is the acronym, findings and actions. We were able to locate late this afternoon 2 jobs that we think were initiated after July 1, which is a magic date in changing the statute affecting how CMGC is administered and interpreted. So we'll be, and it was after 5 o'clock today before that information came to me, so we'll be researching that, and we think we may have 2 examples in the entire state of Oregon, because this is brand new, that we'll be able to use as a starting point, and that gives me great hope that we'll be able to fit this together. We are not going to make the February 4th date for the CMGC findings. Even working backward from that date, we know that we have a 14-day advertising requirement even after we complete the package and have it ready to go. So we're probably out into, I would say, the latter part of February before we'll be able to bring that for your consideration, if we're successful at using the model, one of the models that we've identified this afternoon. And I would say with the help of the McKinsey Group. I would certainly like to acknowledge their cooperation and participation with us in discussions we had with them. And so I'm more optimistic now than I was last Thursday and Friday about finding a solution for this that we can afford. And so I'm anxious to kind of dive into the next steps in this, which will be to begin to develop the new findings and the administrative structure around those findings and around the administration of the CMGC process. So looking forward to some more positive outcomes in the next couple of weeks.
Rick, just 2 quick questions. You talked about backing up to first the SCA. You mentioned one of the kind of deciding pieces for what you gleaned was their community outreach piece, and they're getting involved. Can you give some examples of what that maybe they provided that kind of tilted that in that direction for them?
You know, they described to us the process that they put in place in Oregon City. I think that there were 27 neighborhood groups that whose meetings they attended and to take input. We're not going to go that far. We don't have the budget that Oregon City does, and every meeting costs money, but that level of outreach and willingness, they set up a storefront in the library in Oregon City so that walk-ins could sit down and have ongoing conversations with them once a week about their thoughts and ideas and viewpoints. They did a number of outreach meetings, and to me, the most compelling aspect of it was based on the discussions, they really never had a preconceived idea of what the building should look like. And at the end of the process, they were able to bring the the divergent ideas to a common outcome and develop a project that the community seems to be solidly behind. And that's no easy feat, particularly in their case, they're working with a historic building that has a great deal of public interest and public scrutiny in manner in which the building is going to be remodeled, renovated, and used for an expanded purpose. So I was just really impressed with the process that they used to get to yes, if I may coin the phrase, and with the comfortable approach that they used in getting there versus a directed, targeted, we want to push you in a direction because that's kind of what we have in the back of our mind approach.
Okay. My other question, thank you for that, was regarding the CMGC findings. Can you kind of talk a little bit more about that for us up here as well as at home, just what those findings and the challenges that kind of popped up?
Yeah, the construction manager, general contractor requirements were changed in state law as of July 1, 2014. And those changes incorporated a number of the standards that were in place prior to July 1, but also added a number of new ones. And what we found in our initial research was, what I found was I couldn't find anybody that had initiated a CMGC process between July 1 and now when we're going out, and there's a significant risk to being the first new agency out of the gate in evaluating the alternative contracting method. There are two generally accepted contracting methods. One's called design bid build, and the other is the construction manager general contractor. We support CMGC and are encouraging you as an agency to support that as we move forward and be able to and present to you the findings that we think support it, and it speaks to project schedule, value engineering, ability to manage project cost, ability to define a relationship between the architect, the construction manager, the owner, and the contractor very, very early in the process, so that as issues arise, you're able to collectively and collaboratively identify those issues and put into place solutions. The alternative, design bid build, it tends to be a much more confrontational, combative process where a design deficiency is identified, and then the parties all fight over what the solution is, how much it's going to cost, and who's going to pay for it. So staff's attempting now to present to you, the decision makers, a package that will support the use of the alternative methodology as compared with the standard design bid build. And I say that because certain findings have to be made, and I'm not going to presume that you're going to prove anything until I'm able to present you compelling evidence in support of it. But from my perspective, there is compelling evidence in support of it. What we have already developed and based on the model on June 30th, 2014, addresses about 75% of the findings necessary, and the other 25% are actually the easy 25%. The other challenging aspect of it, however, is that there are reporting requirements that are defined by the Attorney General's office that are more directive and I won't say more onerous, but more directive and more focused than under the earlier CMGC standards. And so the level of scrutiny and it relates both to the selection of subcontractors and the methodology under which the contracts are let for the subs, and the need to incorporate those various contracts into the initial documents as we present them forward.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments for Rick?
Thank you.
We need a meeting on a second or fourth Wednesday about let's do it.
Yeah, this one has to move right along.
We gotta keep
Yeah,
it
I'd
moving.
support that.
Yeah, that's it.
All my Wednesdays are already blocked out, so just fill them out. Get this done.
Now's your chance to get them. All right, we'll move on next to the Urban Renewal District Annual Report. And I believe that's Renata? And Haley.
Thank you.
You have the third version of our annual report, and this is our annual effort to celebrate our successes, look back on all the great progress we've made, share with our political leaders and our citizens and residents all the great work we're doing, what we have on the horizon, what things cost, what the financials are, to really have an open, transparent stance on this important program. So Haley, our finance director, and our city administrator worked on this together to bring it to you. Each year we've taken it to a new level and added new pieces. This year we added some clarification about when the urban renewal district debt could be repaid in timing, and Haley will go through that. And we also added a chart that clarifies what the various taxing districts, how they're impacted over the years. So what I'd like to do is walk through some of the highlights with you and for our viewing public. The first page talks about the goals of the urban renewal district and shows a map just to orient folks. Tax increment financing is how urban renewal pays for projects. It's kind of a complicated concept for people to get their head around, so this graph and this description tries to make it easier to understand. Then we kind of kept a list of frequently asked questions, and you'll find them here. New this year is when will the urban renewal district end at the bottom of the page, since that's come up. Some of the projects we've taken on in the fiscal year 2013-2014 include the Sequoia Parkway extension that we had the grand opening for in May. That project came $350,000 under budget and is providing great transportation links in the industrial park. We invested $13,000 into the community park improvements. That's leveraged almost 2,500 volunteer hours and engaged 6 different civic groups in projects like trail maintenance, removing invasive species, adding these nice new fishing areas at the pond, and on and on. So definitely a big bang for our buck there. Also new this year on First Avenue was our public art. You see pictures there of our 2 new sculptures. They were unveiled in September, and we're moving forward with a call to artists now and hope to add to the collection this spring. By the end of the fiscal year, they will be installed. Another project that we undertook was the team track study that cost $0 to the Urban Renewal District, but did involve staff time, and that was an effort to explore the possibility of public access rail in the industrial park. We found that a team track would cost between $1.7 to $3 million to install, and there wasn't enough demand yet, but it was a valuable exercise, and when that demand equation changes, we would be a catalyst, but it'd be a private sector initiative, not something that the Urban Renewal District or the city would be managing or leading or being financially involved with. Then projects that are actively underway now and on the horizon upcoming years. First and never least is the Library Civic Center that you're working hard on now. That was overwhelmingly approved by the voters in May at 70%. It's a 42,900 square foot building with the library on the ground floor, administrative offices on the second floor, hopefully finished at the end of 2016. We're also have come quite a ways on establishing a quiet zone in downtown Canby. We hope to be talking to our Federal Railroad partners this spring, presenting a plan that we think is solid and addresses all of the safety concerns. If our proposal is accepted, the costs are pretty modest to implement, and we have funds identified to do that. Moving ahead on highlights of some of the great successes we've achieved over the years. Recently was the First Avenue redevelopment project a couple years ago, streetscape, infrastructure improvements, undergrounding utilities, and basically transforming the front door of our downtown. We also, a couple of years ago, constructed a $9 million Canby Police facility that's functioning very well and features a community room that's very well used by our citizens. We established a revolving loan fund a couple of years ago. We have one loan that Haley will report to you in a little bit later today. And in the early days of the urban renewal district, there was a lot of investment in the Canby Pioneer Industrial Park, and that has really paid off. We have 11 industrial companies there now, creating about 750 jobs and significant and increasing assessed value. Our investment in the industrial park included primarily transportation and infrastructure, Sequoia Parkway, Hazeldale Way, 4th Avenue, and Walnut Street. On page 12, you have a summary of all the various streets and circulation projects that have been conducted around town. It's well spread out, and streets look great. We also invested in downtown Canby on page 13. Of course, the streetscape improvements. The Canby Main Street program is an ongoing effort to bring vitality and activity and to support our local businesses. Beautiful entryway signs on Highway 99, frontage improvements on Waite Park, and assistance for preparing for development, primarily the update to the zoning code for downtown Canby. There have been a number of public-private partnerships along the way, including the largest one would be Canby Cinema 8, a $5 million project. The city's involvement in that was the city parking lot. The Andrus Building was developed, as well as the facade improvement program. There have been, I believe, 13 projects that have been completed to date and 3 on the horizon this year. And with that, I'd like to have Haley walk us through the financial.
So on page 16, there's a list of projects. This project list has been rolled forward for quite a few years now, and so it's actually on our agenda to re-look at these projects and these estimates and see if these are things that we're still interested in potentially going at, and if these numbers are realistic at this point. So you guys should be aware that you'll be hearing more about this coming up in the next couple months as staff gets more time to look at it and make a recommendation. So if you move to page 17, none of this should look new. Basically, the way the URA is structured, there's a maximum indebtedness that we're allowed to have of $51,149,000. And so far, as of the end of the year, $38,761,723 have been incurred. So this includes all of the actual bond issues that we've issued from the URA and any directly contracted debt. So that the money that we use to support the contract services every year gets added to that. So that's why it would increase from year to year. So our capacity is still $12,387,000. And then the debt outstanding that we've issued so far, this is the debt schedule that if we paid it in accordance with the debt schedule, we'd be making payments of about $2 million until the year 2036. So then kind of what we added, some of these drafts were in last year's report, but we've reformatted it and we tried to put it to the question of when will the district end? Because people want to know the answer to that question. But according to statute, the district will end when all of the debt is repaid. And that there's some variables to that we don't control. And there's some variables to that the council and the agency do control as far as whether or not they issue more debt. So the more debt you issue, the longer it will take to repay. The more projects you will get done, the more value in theory. But those are all variables that affect when the district would end. So what we put here is a history of the percentage increases of revenue over the years, and as you can see, it's fluctuated. And so then I did 2 projections. One, if you take all of those increases, on average, we increase 15%. But if you look at a lot of these that are under 15%. So the first projection was no additional debt besides continuing to do the contract services of about $500,000 that we do now through 2019. So if we continue to do that and don't issue any more debt, then, and we have an average revenue increase of 15%, it's estimating that we would be able to pay off the debt in about 2023. The next projection is a little bit more conservative. If you take the revenue and you assume a 5% increase, we'd be able to pay off the debt between 2026 and 2027. So again, both of these assume, though, that the only additional debt that we issue is $500,000 of contracted debt through 2019, which is a 20-year period that the plan was meant to be active for.
Go ahead.
Haley, does that mean then, since the the district isn't ending until it's fully repaid? That much,
Exactly.
I think everybody understands at this point by now, I think. Now, there's still debt capacity. Does that mean after 2019, no more debt could be issued? Or
There's no
you could
restriction
still
that
issue
says
up to
that.
this $12 million?
Well, up to the $51 million, which
Well,
12
$12 million
is
that
left.
remains.
So yeah, so if a different agency came in and they wanted to do, as long as the project was within the district and in the plan, it's my understanding that they could issue additional debt as long as they don't go over the debt capacity.
So the 20 years was just an outline, it wasn't a hard and fast number?
There's nothing that restricts it legally to that period.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for this page. This is going to make my life a lot easier because you don't even have any idea how many times a week I'm asked this question.
Exactly. So
And this
we
will help me answer it. So
We
I
added
appreciate this.
some of these stuff last year, but I think it's much clearer this
Yeah.
year.
It's
with the way
Pretty
it's presented.
pictures and everything. You do the fantastic job, and this is going to make my world easier. Thank you very much.
Good. So, any other questions on that page?
I just have, can you give me a gentle reminder on what happened in '07 to give us a 54% jump?
I can't. I'm assuming a big development came online, but I'd have to look
That would
that
be my
up.
guess. I was just kind of curious if we
Yeah,
knew.
it had to have been a new development came in, which increased the tax base in the redevelopment area.
Right around that time
Yeah,
is
I mean-
when now the Anderson Quality Spring Building and the Trend Business
Okay.
Center and Kendall Floral and a number of those buildings kind of came online in that rough
Okay.
time frame.
That was my guess, but my memory is fading.
Yeah, pretty big jump. We could see another spike like that. All it takes is one new major
Right.
business coming into anywhere within the urban renewal area, and we could very likely see another spike like that.
Yeah.
Could I ask a quick vocabulary question? Page 12, it says summary of street and circulation projects. I'm not sure what a circulation project that means. Street and-
I'm assuming that's just meant to reference transit projects.
Okay.
Transportation.
Just a couple of things we've been talking about, just streetwise in the projects that on the bottom there at page 12, just again of just traffic movement and improving those areas to help with mobility around town is really what those were
Flow.
pertaining to. Flow, yeah.
So then if we move to page 19, this is something else that we added because a lot of people ask this. Basically, the tax increment is not additional taxes to taxpayers, but it's a reallocation of the taxes. So this basically shows you how they would be allocated if the district didn't exist. And these are...
To point out for everybody listening in the audience and at home, that the assessed value that you see in 2014 is in large part due to the efforts of the urban renewal agency and the infrastructure improvements that were created that led to the attraction of the businesses that caused the increase in assessed value. Often it's overlooked. We just see, I have agencies all the time saying, look at all the money we've gone to support your urban renewal agency, and I have to remind them that much of what you have foregone would not have been available to you because the industry that has come in and created the increase in assessed value in the urban renewal area would not have located here without the infrastructure to support it.
Mr. Chair. To that point, Haley, do you know if any of the land that was within the urban renewal district was under or is under agricultural deferral?
Actually, in the industrial park, quite a few of the property owners do have their land in agricultural deferral, which is why you see the beautiful dahlias and the vegetable crops and the what looks like wheat, et cetera, to maintain farm tax deferral.
Then remind me, if you can, the rules on ag deferral. If I own that land, my assessment is this, but are the taxing districts actually getting any of my taxes then, or does it wait until it goes off deferral or I sell the property?
It depends on if they were in deferral when the district was established, because that would be the frozen base.
What I'm talking about is the revenues that go into the county assessor. Right now, if I have a piece of property that's not in an urban renewal district and it's on ag deferral, am I paying property, am I writing a check to the county assessor?
Yes, you are, but you're paying it at farm rates versus industrial rates, which is significantly less.
Thank you.
So if we go back to Rick's point, basically what the last page tells us is that about 111 million of the growth is from development. So if you look at this chart on page 19, if we didn't have that growth from development, if you went on, if you had only the development that was here and you went on the 3% increase a year, the max it's allowed to increase a year, you would only have, this number would only be, well, the incremental value would only be about 34 million instead of 145 million. So this dollar amount, so that's what? 1/3. I'm not very good at math in my head. That's why Excel and calculators exist. So it would be 1/3. So the dollars that these districts would have gotten if we didn't have that developmental assessed increase would be significantly lower.
I have to do CPAs.
See the size of her calculator.
But another way to kind of take this actually the information on page 19 and the information on page 21, which is the same concept of page 19, except for 19 is based off of actual taxes, and 21 is based off of what the estimates would have been for this district, assuming the growth when we did the plan for the URA. And this graph really compares the estimate to the actual, and it breaks out in the column, the different colors are the different taxing districts. So rather than having the columns you have in the spreadsheet, you have different parts of that bar that kind of depict that. We could only include in this graph this taxing districts that were included in the estimate done on page 21. So then if we go on to page 22, you have the 14-year total of how the money was spent over time and the percentage of the different projects that they were spent on. So when I look at this, it looks strange because if you look at the 52 million and you were to compare that to our the 52 million, the 51 million of indebtedness, you would think they've already spent more than that. But really, you're showing the debt proceeds, that 34 million is much closer to the debt we've incurred because this total revenues also includes the, so it includes debt proceeds and it includes the taxes collected that end up paying the debt. So those are both revenue sources, so that's why those look different if anyone tried to compare those things.
So debt service costs don't affect our maximum indebtedness?
They do not, but that's not really what I'm saying either. It's the revenue of the taxes and then the proceeds of the debt that are making it much higher than that 38 million or whatever.
Right,
it
I
was.
understood that. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that we didn't count the debt service costs as part of that 52
They also don't
million.
count.
Okay, thank you.
So then on page 23, you have the budget for the current, no, you have the actual, the 1-year actual for fiscal year 14 and the budget for fiscal year 15. And then the last page is what we just talked about. It's the assessed value, the frozen value, the increase in value. So that 34 million on here is what you would expect the increase would have been if you didn't have the new development.
Haley, on page 20, it's the estimated versus actual revenue impacts. Were those estimates done at the opening of the urban renewal district?
Yeah, they were done when the
Okay.
plan was done. They're out of the plan that was
Gotcha.
adopted when it was established.
So the ongoing gap, it's just there because of that estimate?
Because
from
it's an
15 years
estimate.
ago.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the beginning, we actually had things come online sooner than we thought. So
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning, the actuals were higher and now we're lower. If you have one big development, it could flip-flop again.
Sure.
It's just because it's an estimate.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No.
For Haley or Renata?
Excellent
All right,
report.
thank you, ladies, very good. And next up, we have the revolving loan, oops, excuse me.
There was a motion in Renata's.
Oh,
Oh,
that's,
thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the 2013-14 Canby Urban Renewal District Annual Report as presented.
Second that.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Vice Chair Hodson, to accept the 2013-2014 Canby Urban Renewal District Annual Report as presented. Any discussion? Ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it carries 6-0. Thank you very much. All right, so next up, we have the revolving loan fund semi-annual report, and it'll be Finance Director Haley Fish again.
Yes, so within the revolving loan program, it states that we'll give you a report of the status semi-annually. So we kind of came up with this last year. It's the same format that you saw then. We haven't issued any new loans since then, so under the program, we've only issued one loan for $35,000. But we've budgeted in the current year $250 to make available in case projects wanted to take advantage of this loan program, and we're at that $250,000 because that's the maximum loan per the way the program was developed. It's my understanding that we don't have anyone actively seeking it, but Renata might have a better understanding of that. And within the plan, they estimated a total of $750 potentially to be allocated to this program. But so far, we've only issued the $35,000, and they're current on making their payments currently. I actually have them set up on auto pay. It's great.
All right, any questions or comments? No? All right, no action necessary, Kim? Thank you, Haley. All right. Rick, do we have any other new business tonight? All right. Rick, do you think we have time for exec session?
I think we have time for exec session, and the topic will be that we'll undertake now will be the discussion relative to the proposals we've received for this property that we're in now and for the library. We have some proposals and some recommendations for you.
All right, is that the pleasure of the agency to go ahead and head for exec session?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
All right.
rather than afterwards, yeah.
Kim, would you like the announcement read?
Yes, please.
All righty. The Urban Renewal Agency will now recess this meeting to meet in executive session for the purpose of discussing real property. The executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192-660, Parent 2, Parent E, which allows the agency to meet in executive session to discuss those topics. Only representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. The agency will adjourn to the City Hall conference room to hold its executive session. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the session, we may convene the meeting in the City Hall conference room and conduct any further business that needs to be taken care of. All right, Camby, so the Urban Renewal Agency is now going to go into executive session in the conference room, and we will come back at 7:30 tonight for City Council. So stay tuned, and with that, we will need a motion.
Move to recess, correct? Kim?
Go ahead and read this way, move to recess
All
into
right.
executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move we recess to executive session pursuant to ORS 192.1600, excuse me, Parent 2, Parent E, real property.
And is there a second? It's been moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Vice Chair Hodson, to go into executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660, Parent 2, Parent E, real property. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agency is now recessed.